Hello, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am coming to you from the Positive Media Studios here in Mitcham in Victoria, and it is just a joy to be working with Positive Media to bring you this podcast. And just a quick thank you to those of you that have been sending me the most beautiful messages of thanks and letting me know how much the podcast is making a difference in your life or in the life of somebody that you care about. It means the world to me. And so I just really want to say thank you for sending those on and really share my appreciation. I'm really busting to bring you today's guest. But before I introduce Jean Kropper, I wanted to just share a little bit about why I really felt that this would be an important episode to record, that I really think is going to make a difference for so many of you. And I know since meeting Jean, it's already made a difference for me. And I know that this will just propel the impact of her work on me further forward after chatting again today, but also really open doors for you in terms of managing emotions and stress and anxiety. When I had our daughter, which was in 2010, really after our son in 2008 was born, I had postnatal depression but didn't know. And kind of it just felt like wading through mud every day to kind of get through all of the things I needed to do, and lots of tears and lots of rage and lots of anger, lots of emotions. I didn't really know what to do with them, but also wasn't able to see the woods for the trees and recognise what was happening to my mental health. When we had our daughter a couple of years later, the same kind of experience started to unfold, and I realised I needed help. And it was called the Mother and Baby Unit at the Rosebud Hospital. But essentially what I learned is it wasn't really so much about the baby, it was really all about the mother. And when I was admitted into the hospital for my mental health at that stage, and she was taken care of by me and by the beautiful nurses, one of the things that, as a small group of us who were in that admission were invited to participate in, was some art therapy. And, you know, I don't have much of a recollection of what I did when I put pen or pencil to paper that day. I don't recall what I drew or what I kind of created, but I remember how it made me feel. And it kind of felt like, for the first time in a long time, my shoulders dropped. It was a way of expressing myself that I'd never used before or tried. And it wasn't something I continued with, because after leaving the hospital, after a week, I was back into parenthood with a toddler and a little bubba. But I feel like Jean's bringing me back to this really beautiful outlet for our stress and our anxiety. And I've probably mentioned that I do paint by numbers, but this is different. So despite the fact that I'm talking about art therapy with an art therapist in a hospital setting, what Jean does is she uses art as a process to help us release emotions, and her work is internationally recognised. She is the author of 3 books. She's taught purpose-driven art workshops for over 25 years in the United States, in Canada and in Australia. Her workshops include meditative drawing and really help to make mindfulness accessible. And it's so powerful because we have these short attention spans that are getting shorter, I know, because of our use of social media and just the way the world is so fast. And so to make mindfulness an activity that's accessible for us is a really powerful conversation to have. So Jean Kropper is an artist, she's a designer and a paper engineer, and she's leveraged her own journey to really make a really powerful difference for others. And one of the things that we'll talk about towards the end are some of the courses that Jean offers. But it really does give me great pleasure to welcome from Sydney here in Australia, Jean Kropper. Jean, I really want to thank you so much for joining us today. I've been really excited to talk to you again.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm looking forward to the conversation as well.
Oh, thank you. And I wonder if people listening may be thinking, oh, I'm not creative, drawing art, this isn't for me. Maybe I'll come back, to the podcast next week. But what would you say to people who might be thinking, oh, I don't think that this is going to be something that's going to work for me?
I absolutely understand. I've had many people in my workshops, actually, probably the majority of them aren't artists or have any art background. And I wanted to test out that was really okay or making it safe for them. And I had a man who's works in the printing industry. He's in his 70s, works as a recruiter in the print industry, no art background at all. And he and his wife came out of curiosity to one of my workshops, and they did some really nice drawings, and he was comfortable. So I thought, good, this isn't about creating a picture as such. You might create a nice picture, but it's really about using the process of mark making or doodling to release some emotions and to sort of go into a flow state where you're just drawing away with dots, lines, or repeated little shapes to create patterns. So you can get into sort of a flow state and forget the world, forget time, forget all the responsibilities, and just sort of zone out for a while with what you're doing. So art is sort of the excuse for something simple to focus on. And it's sort of just a fun, creative process. And we're not doing complicated. There's no perspective. It's real simple stuff. And so you can just follow along with exactly what I'm doing on the video and just mimic exactly what I'm doing. And you can also take what I'm doing and go off in a different creative direction if you've got that, in your head. But it's not complicated art. That's the biggest thing.
It means a lot to me because I've never thought of myself as creative growing up through most of my adult work. Although I do reflect over the last 10 years of my life and think, well, I am creating things. I've created a podcast. I create presentations. I create experiences. And so sometimes we can have these kind of labels we give ourselves, can't we? And I really appreciate you. I love the word safety. I love that because it's vulnerable. It's a bit like speaking in public or singing in front of someone, and drawing in front of someone can feel vulnerable. And so I really appreciate that you've been able to let us know that it's about mark making and doodling, which I love. We can all make marks on something, and there's no...
Yeah, and also the other thing is your work is private. You don't have to show anything to anybody else in the workshop. You can, and people often do, but that's entirely up to you. And yeah, so there's a sense of safety that you can just see what's going on and join in, but you don't have to be visible. Yes. And when we do show work, it's not about what's good or not. It's usually just getting ideas for different approaches, because each session I show some creative prompts or sort of ideas. We might be doing crisscrosses and little lines and playing with all the things you can do with crisscrosses and lines. Another time we might be doing little patterns in a grid. And it's interesting just to see what everyone has done, starting with exactly the same idea to begin with. Yes. And so it's more about going, oh, wow, what a different approach. Or, oh, I love the colors you used. It's not about that's a good drawing or it's a bad one. That's just not relevant to what we're doing.
Yes, it's not about the outcome. It's about the process, isn't it? It's about the experience of the process. And
along the line, you are developing some art skills, some drawing skills, and you'll develop more comfort with making marks on paper. But it's also fine to just throw your drawings away each week. It's just a piece of paper. And then sometimes you might make drawings that you think, oh, I really like that. And that's fine too.
Yes. Oh, there's so much permission. And the beautiful thing about this is if after even just listening to Jean today, you might want to just start experimenting and just sort of see what happens with crosses and lines on the paper in front of you. Or maybe you're out for a walk, maybe you're out driving. But I really love, Jean, that we together today in this episode can open a door for people to have a different way of managing stress, of really supporting their mental health and their well-being, and also having a little bit of fun, doing something for pleasure where there's no expectation. It's not a side hustle. It's not about making money. It's not about doing anything other than just enjoying an activity for the sake of enjoying the activity. But before we dive deeper into some questions about how the process works and the difference that it can make for people. And I know you're going to share an activity with us. Can you please tell us what led you to doing this work? I know that it's been a bit of a rough road for you at times, hasn't it? Like it has for all of us. Can you share with us a little bit about your journey to here?
Well, I was married for 19 years to a man who had a lot of childhood trauma. And I kind of knew it was there, but I didn't know how significant that was. And he didn't want to deal with it. And it sort of came up every few years in the marriage. And I said, hey, I think you should get some counseling. And he'd put it off and put it off. And eventually he had a lot of stress in business. He became an alcoholic. He had a nervous breakdown, and he became quite volatile. And home became really frightening. He was having tantrums, and he started going psychotic when he was getting drunk, and he started throwing things. And I've just never dealt with anything like that before. And I didn't know how to talk about it. So I didn't say a lot to friends or family because I just was so shocked. I didn't know what to say, and I didn't want to shame him. I was just sort of, quite freaked out, really. And it ended up that my son and I, neither of us were getting any sleep, and I was getting in trouble at work. I was working in direct marketing and was being threatened with being fired because I was making mistakes. My son was getting in trouble at school. And eventually I was just like, oh, wow, we're in trouble. I have to get out of here. And my son and I just moved to a hotel. And then eventually I got divorced and left the marriage. And after that, I tried to keep my son and his dad connected, which was kind of a mistake. But my son and I ended up with post-traumatic stress and insomnia for many years. And my former husband drank continuously and for 12 years and then died. He, rather systematically drank himself to death, which was horrifying to watch and horrifying in the sense that I was also powerless to change, because I realized finally that I couldn't change him. He needed to make decisions about his own mental health and whether he wanted to change directions. But my son and I struggled for a long time, and eventually I sort of hit a wall. I had a friend who said, hey, I think you're in trouble here. And I realized I needed to get help. And I went to the Heal for Life Center in the Hunter Valley, which helps people who've been through trauma to recover from that. They've got a great program that's a healing week. And then I also did acupuncture, craniosacral therapy, trauma release exercises, therapeutic massage, a whole bunch of things to release stress from the body. Because I guess I realized, one, I was in trouble, and two, I wouldn't have much quality of life and couldn't really function work-wise unless I got healthy. Yes. And also that I needed to get healthy so I could help my son heal and help him move on from what had been happening to us.
Thank you, Jean, for sharing. And I just want to really applaud your courage, because I can't even begin to imagine what the experience was like and how hard it was to make that first step. And you did it, and that first step led to where we are today, where you are today. I say where we are, obviously having a conversation, but to where you are, and having endured what you have and been so proactive about your own healing, and being such a wonderful mum to support your son through his healing journey as well. It's really powerful, and I hope that for those of you listening, that if you are in a situation where you need a little bit of inspiration or need a little something just to help you kind of make the decision is the important decision that you need to make, that hearing from someone like Jean, knowing what she's been through and knowing what that first step has led her to, I hope that might give you a little bit of encouragement. But please always reach out for help. And Jean, so thank you. Hang on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess it has been helpful talking to others, and also knowing that in sharing that all those, what feels like lost years sometimes, of just struggling by day to day, trying to get up and, get my son to school and cooking breakfast and guiding him through homework and getting the laundry done and, running a household and trying to get work done. That those years of just dragging along, it's nice now having some insights from that time and realizing the things I've learned from going through that are actually helpful to someone else. It gives it meaning. And instead of feeling like it's wasted years, it's sort of like, okay, I can actually help other people because I can talk about what I went through and what I learned from that.
Is that how you became was that how you were introduced to meditative drawing and using art as a process to manage and work through really challenging times in your life? Was that at the Healing Centre, or was it how did you come to do this work, and where did you get introduced?
Sure. I suppose it was really on my own. I originally studied fine art at university, so I had a background in art. However, and I guess going through the bad times, I was sort of hankering to do some creative work, but I didn't have much concentration. And I couldn't do any sort of strategic planning for artworks, or I wasn't getting much sleep. But I really wanted to be creative. And I guess I started playing around with making art as a process rather than worrying about the end result. So that was a big shift. And as an artist, you want to make a piece of artwork and you judge yourself quite harshly. And so just to play around with art as a process was quite a big leap. And sometimes I'd just play around with like collage to sort of say what's going on in my brain right now. And it would be lots of dark colors and patterns and clutter and busyness. And sometimes it was drawing, and sometimes it was making things. But I realized that I needed to do creative stuff to get what was out of my head and on paper. And that just that process of awareness of getting things from, I guess, not being conscious of it to awareness and getting it out of my head is a really healing thing. And I've since learned in all sorts of counseling and reading that simply that process of getting something out of your head onto paper is really valuable, because you start being aware of what's going on rather than those emotions driving you. And then you can start making choices. You can say, okay, I'm really angry today, or I'm afraid of violence, or I'm just really anxious, or I'm exhausted and I can't plan, I'm confused, I can't figure out what to do next. If you can identify what's going on for you, then you can start to make decisions about, what care you need or where you go from there.
When you're explaining that you were able to sort of recognize what was happening for you in the way that you were thinking, and then make that connection between, I've got it in my head, I want to get it out of my head and onto paper. And some people will do that through journaling. It got me thinking, because as I said before, and I giggle about it, but it's so relaxing for me, my paint by numbers. And that does not require anything other than for me to figure out which number it is, because they're so small I can hardly see them these days, and match it with the paint. But when I'm doing that, what I'm doing is I'm thinking, right, I've got some downtime, I want to do something relaxing. And so for people who are listening who are thinking, right, this idea that I can bring to mind something that's challenging and I can express it through what I do on paper, versus I can pick up a pen and get a piece of paper and just start making marks for relaxation, or just for a little bit of downtime, just to give my brain a break from my work or from the stresses of the day. Is the approach different, or can you just help us sort of understand the difference between those two kind of approaches?
Yeah, I can tell you a bit more about what we actually do in a workshop. There's basically, I wanted to teach some very specific skills to help people manage their emotional well-being. Yeah. So it's a creative workshop, but there's also some very specific skills in it that over the course of the 4 weeks or the 10 weeks for the the workshops that you can do, you're building a habit and getting used to a process that you can change your mood, change your state, and take control of mental health. So at the beginning of almost all the sessions, we do breath work, a series of breath work. So that quiets the brain, quiets busy thoughts, makes you a little more alert and focused, lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, and allows you to be present more and just, I suppose, enjoy more and be here for the workshop. And then we go into just explaining what the creative idea is, or the creative prompts are for that particular workshop. There's astral flowers, there's some little grids we draw, there's some different mark making, and each session has a worksheet that shows you what we're playing with for that particular session, what creative ideas we're playing with. And then we go into the drawing, and then we draw for maybe about 45 minutes and come out of it and just chat about what we did. And also included in the workshop, I send some little grounding exercises, and grounding exercises are all sorts of little things that we do just to bring you back to the present. And it might be as simple as rubbing your palms together and then putting them over your eyes, and that just sort of calms you down a bit. It can be going outside with bare feet and walking on wet grass in the morning, so that you just come into the present. There are lots of really simple things, but if you interrupt your day periodically and just do those for 5 minutes, it can interrupt a spiral into anxiety or getting into anger or into any strong emotions. It can just bring you back to the present, quiet a busy mind, and helps you go on. So there's sort of some very specific skills that we're building. And when you first do them, it can be hard to slow down. So, sometimes when people start doing breath work, it's sort of hard to calm down and get into it. But if you've done it repeatedly, then your body and your mind sort of go, oh, yeah, I know what to do now. Okay, right, I get it. Okay, I can do the breath work. And then you slowly get used to it. And I find also with the workshops, there's live sessions each week where we draw together, and then there's the other things like the grounding exercises that are sent to you separately. But with the sessions, you're sort of training yourself so that you can take control of doing those things yourself. It's much nicer doing them in a group, but you learn the process of using breath work to quiet a busy brain. You learn the process of doodling or meditative drawing to a particular prompt. And again, focusing on just one thing. And the main purpose of meditative drawing is just focusing on one thing, excluding everything else. So your brain gets to quiet down, your nervous system gets to quiet down, and your stress level drops while you're just doing something really simple and that's fun. And over time, you build those skills so that by the end of the workshop, you go, oh, okay, if I'm driving in traffic and I'm really stressed out, somebody cuts me off, I can just do the breath work while I'm driving. Or, if you're in a business meeting or at a family gathering that's getting heated, you can say, I know, I can do that breath work exercise. You've got some skills that you can use yourself to calm yourself down.
And spending the time together and having that repetition and, like you say, that support of you and the group and doing it all together is about creating a new habit, isn't it? Teaching a skill, practicing
absolutely.
the skill.
And it's wonderful because, I've had people from Paris and Israel and rural South Africa and, Canada, the United States, all over Australia. And it's really lovely to come together and just to do a really simple process together of, doing the breath work and drawing. But there's a lovely sort of joyous, vulnerable energy of coming together in the workshops, which is just heartwarming.
Oh, and if you could see Jean, she's just glowing. And I really feel strongly that a large part of the whole experience is the connection. There's so much loneliness. There's so much disconnection. We're very connected by our technology, but in terms of catching up with people in person and really being able to spend quality time in the company of other like-minded people, it's getting rarer and rarer, or more and more rare, I should say. And so I love that you've got this beautiful international group, and that the idea that, well, not that necessarily every workshop's the same. Obviously, you're open to the world, so it's potluck as to who you get to group with in the workshops that you run. But I especially love that environment. You create this safe space. You're with other people who are all there. Everyone's come for a reason. Their reasons might all be very different, but you can work through it together.
Yes.
Tell us
and I was just looking at some statistics around mental health, and one study was saying that in 2022, 44% of adults in Australia stated that mental health was the biggest health issue facing the country. That's a lot of people, and 37% of men and 54.7% of women have reached out to mental health professionals. That was from 2021. So mental health is a huge issue. And I think post-pandemic, where so many things were disrupted, with financial stress and changes in the workplace, there's been a lot that we've had to deal with in change. And we need extra support and new solutions. And meditative drawing is one of them. And some people play music, some people go running, and to me, meditative drawing is another way of wrapping up some very practical mental health skills in doing something fun and coming together with others.
Yes, you're right. It is a very special way of being able to really take care of ourselves. And I often worry that because life seems so busy, that so many people will wait until things have gotten to a point where it's quite serious. And yet, if we can, in a preventative way, we can look after ourselves. We can make those, I guess, deposits into our mental health and wellbeing bank, whether that's through, like you said, whether that's through exercise, chatting with somebody, whether it's through breath work, or jumping in the bay on a cold morning, or having a sauna, or whatever it is. There are so many things that we can do, and meditative drawing is one of the kind of tools, I guess, we can add into our toolkit that we can take anywhere and do anywhere once we've been introduced and we have some understanding about how to kind of proceed and to make the most of the experience. And
yes,
and especially this idea.
It's been interesting. I've worked with so many different groups as well. I worked with Little C Council in Melbourne with council workers who were on the front line during COVID when they had a debrief day. And I've worked with stressed out entrepreneurs from the city of Ryde, their council. Children with arthritis. I did a workshop with them so they could draw out anxiety, instead of, they deal with a lot of pain and anxiety, and sort of saying, okay, well, let's draw what anxiety looks like for you and get it out of their heads. I've worked with charity workers in Kenya who support people who've been through sexual violence, and overworked teachers and female entrepreneurs at business conferences, and lots of different people who are just finding ways of dealing with stress, anxiety, and it's very normal to have strong emotions, rage or fear or grief, and just try to figure out what are ways we can vent these emotions that are healthy, that don't hurt us and that don't hurt other people. And I think it's really important to learn skills like that. And one of the sessions is, I call it chaos drawing, where you're basically scribbling on a page, but you're choosing to focus on one of the, a strong emotion that you're dealing with. And I had one woman who was an education officer at a zoo, and she said, she just happened to be really angry that day. and to, vent that emotion in a very controlled way for a set amount of time. We might spend 10 minutes just on that, and then back off from it so that you can go into a strong emotion, but that you also can come out of it. And then we do some calming and soothing drawing. And I also had feedback from one of the participants who was in the United States who'd lost both her parents in the last 6 months and was really afraid to feel grief because she was afraid of drowning in it. And she said it was a really useful process to be able to go into that emotion in a safe way, but then also know she had help coming out of that back to the present, so she didn't get stuck there.
Yes, it can be so frightening to feel. It really can. And I was chatting to Lucy here before at the studio, and I was sharing a story about how our daughter, she was home this morning before I came in to meet with you, and I was feeling overwhelmed. I've been away from my laptop for a few days. I went to Sydney for a couple of days. Anyway, I felt a little bit behind. I felt I had a lot to get on top of, but not quite enough time to kind of really feel organised. And she noticed, and she said, we've got this thing for, I think they're called happy hippos. Anyway, they're this little treat, and treats are treats in our house. They're actually treats. And we had some in the cupboard, and she said, oh, I'll get you a happy hippo. And I said, there's two parts of me right now. There's a part of me that is going to say this. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel stress. I'm allowing myself to feel it whilst also moving forward and doing what I can in the time I have. There is also a part of me that says, I really would love to have a happy hippo. Because I think it's often, and I didn't. I moved on to get things done, and I might have a happy hippo this afternoon. They're only little, but I think that it can be so easy to kind of numb ourselves to how we feel, and we can do that through happy hippos, or some people will do it with alcohol, or it could be just diving so far deep into work that you hardly ever come up for breath. And for everyone listening, I read a beautiful quote, and I don't recall who said it, but it was, the way to feel better is to get better at feeling bad. And I don't like the words feeling good and bad, but it's a poignant kind of reference to the idea that when we become more willing to experience how we feel, first of all, we realize that it's not dangerous, that we can allow ourselves to feel, and that we can still continue to move forward. The sun still comes up. It's not easy, depending on what you're going through, and that it's very natural to feel all feelings. And so I really feel as though this meditative drawing is this gateway, like you say, a safe space and a gateway to learn how to experience more of what we're feeling, and also to move through it so that we can come out the other side. Because whilst we can worry that we will drown, like one of your workshop attendees, that she was worried she would drown in her grief. And that's frightening. That's frightening, isn't it? So how do you support people, or what advice do you give to listeners who might be thinking, I feel like that too. I don't want to open the door because it feels like I'm opening the floodgates. And if I do that, I might never close them. What would you say to people who are maybe thinking along those lines?
I suppose just begin. And when you come to the workshops, you might not feel anything in particular. No particular emotions might come up at the beginning, and that's fine, because really you're doing the meditative drawing, you're doing the mark making, and you're just beginning to learn the skills. So you're experiencing breath work and just having a go at it. You're starting to do the drawing and practicing, focusing on that and letting go of your day. And just you're starting to learn those skills of awareness and managing your own emotions. And to me, it's a bit like being in the surf, where you're playing around in the surf, but then every once in a while, a big wave comes along and completely knocks you over. And I guess I've gotten used to the feeling of, oh, okay, I'll let it knock me over. And then the emotions do can completely cover you and knock you down. But if you just stay with it, the wave is going to retreat. And, a few minutes later, the wave's gone out to sea, and, you stand up again and you're okay. Yeah. And I guess to me, learning to manage mental health is a bit like that, about playing in the surf, if I can use that as a metaphor, where, you think it's all over when you've got sand in your hair and you're upside down and there's water in your mouth. And then, the wave retreats and you go, oh, I'm actually okay. So in the sessions, you're just learn the basic skills, going, okay, the grounding exercises, the breath work, the playing around with the doodling with particular marks. It's just practice, and gradually you get a sense of awareness and more control, and you start building the skills. And then, one of the sessions, you might realize you're really angry, or you're really sad, or you're fearful of something, or anxious. And you start realizing you've got some skills to start dealing with it. And that's not to say, go ahead to go counseling. That's absolutely, can also be a very valuable thing to do at the same time.
Yes.
But I'm giving participants some specific skills that they can pull out when they need them.
Yes. Jean, how can listeners who are quite intrigued by this conversation and interested to make a little bit of a start in their own time, and I happen to be sitting down with a pen and paper in front of me, how can we make a little bit of a start? Could you give us a little bit of a sort of a taster?
Okay. Well, I suppose one of the things is that we do with the breath work is that we do what's called square breathing. And with square breathing, you're basically breathing in for the count of 4. You're holding your breath for the count of 4. You're breathing out for the count of 4, holding the breath for the count of 4. And it's called square breathing because you're sort of like working around the square and going in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. So to start with, it's really useful just to do that and just go through that. Shall I talk you through that?
Yeah, please. Yes.
Sure. Okay. So first you're breathing in to the count of 4. So in, 2, 3, 4, and then just hold the breath for the count of 4. 2, 3, 4. And breathing out for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just hold the breath. 2, 3, 4. Breathing in slowly, and just breathe gently in. If you can do it through your nose, that's a good thing. And then hold. 2, 3, 4, and gently breathe out. 4, and then just hold. 2, 3, 4. We'll just do a couple more rounds. In, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4, and gently release. 3, 4, and then just hold. 2, 3, 4. Now just go back to your regular breathing. But that square breathing techniques is used by yoga practitioners. It's also used by Navy SEALs before they go into combat. So it's a process that allows you to quiet a busy brain and start just calming the nervous center, the nervous system. And with doodling, you can do simple things like just drawing a whole row of little squares and just focus on that as if nothing else exists. And just draw a whole line of little squares across a page. And then you might draw some just a little bit bigger across the page. And then you might draw some skinny rectangles and draw skinny rectangles across the page. And just focusing on that as if nothing else exists and as if it's the only thing that matters in the world. And it just gives your brain a chance to quiet down. And you know that what you're doing isn't important in itself. And yet, when you choose to focus on that, the stresses of the day sort of fade away, and it allows your brain and your nervous system to just calm down. So that's really the essence of what meditative drawing is. And then at the end of it, just going, well, when as you're drawing, when other thoughts come up, oh gosh, that's right, I put the laundry in, I've got to put it in, put it out to dry. Just sort of go, okay, write that down if you need to, but you don't have to do it now. And often during meditative drawing, a lot of things pop into your head because everything else is quieting down. And that can be really useful because you can start realizing the things that are important to you and the things you've forgotten. And it gives your brain time to sort of put things in a filing cabinet. Because I've read a lot about memory and breath work and mental health in the last couple of years. And the main process of memory is to choose what to forget, because we actually have to forget, 95% of what goes into our heads every day because there isn't room for everything. And so we need to just select what it is that matters and file it away somewhere important. So to me, meditative drawing is a bit like taking your car out of gear to drift for a little while and leaving some space for the things that you want to remember, the things that are important to drift up to consciousness. And then you can just take note of what you want to do with that. Oh, yes, okay, I'll get the laundry done later. But sometimes it's things that you realize are actually important that you'd forgotten in the busyness of your days, something that is a priority. And meditative drawing just gives your brain space to slow down, to calm down a bit, and sift through all the many things you can just let go of, and the few things that you want to tuck in the memory and keep.
Yes, and the idea that you could have a little Post-it note beside you so that, like you say, you've literally got a pen or a pencil in hand or a texter or whatever, a Sharpie, whatever it is that you like, and you can make a note of that and come back to it. But yeah, I wanted to really emphasize this idea that, as you were saying about putting the car into neutral and just letting it roll, and this idea of space, that we are so much more likely to be thinking about what's next or reflecting on something that's happened, that we spend less than 50% of our waking hours thinking about what's happening in the moment. We need more white space in our lives, and the purpose of our lives is to find meaning and connection and love, and purpose is different for everybody, but it's not to be on all the time. It's not to be all consuming of every little piece of information and opportunity that comes our way. And so a lot of us, and me included, our attention isn't what it once was, and we're less able to be present in the moment when it counts. And I think of when I'm with my kids, when I'm with my parents who are aging, when I'm with Pete, I'm really trying to be more mindfully present in the moment so that I can really savor those moments together, because it's a bit like catching moonlight. You can't hold on to those moments and those experiences. The best way that we can make the most of it is by being present when we're with the people that we love, or in a moment that's special for us. And so I can see that the more you can take time to draw and to doodle and to make marks on your paper, it's such a gift for our brains. It's a pause, it's some space, it's a little bit of a time out, and that's so healthy for our nervous system, for our brain, but also translates into other parts of our lives where we're gathering more focus, we're more settled, we can pay attention to what's more important, let go of what's not. And all of this is so powerful. And so when you said making marks, and I've done my picture, I've done my squares and then my bigger squares, I've done that while we were talking. And you said focus as if it's the most important thing in the world, and yet this picture goes nowhere. It's not going to get framed anywhere, but it's the process, isn't it? It's the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you were saying about being present, because we only live in the present. I mean, the past is gone, the future isn't here yet. Our whole point of power is in the present. Our whole point of when we can connect with people is now. And I think with all our worry about the past or anxiety about the future and sense of needing to plan, we forget that the only point we can make our lives happen is now in the present. And yeah, if we are more present, you're right, we are more focused, we are more settled, we can make better decisions. And what I hope in my workshops is I'm giving people skills to take control of their own mental health and their well-being, and that the very simple skills that I'm teaching are also multiplying and compounding, so that by repeating them, it gives you so much more control and so much more calm and control of your own well-being, simply by the repetition and by hanging out together in a joyous, safe space. It helps focus your attention and say, okay, I'm going to give myself this block of time to calm down and just have some fun together.
Yes. And that's a beautiful lead into me asking you how people can connect with you and learn about your wonderful work and work with you through the workshops. Tell us all about where we can get in touch.
Sure. Yeah, the meditative drawing workshops over 4 weeks. And so it's got 4 live sessions and then the worksheets. And I also send through texts and links to videos and articles for grounding exercises and book lists and all sorts of other fun things, that some of which are a nice surprise when we get there. But there's a link that I'll give you that can put people on the waiting list for it when I'm launching, which is very soon. And also people are also welcome to reach out on LinkedIn and connect with me there. But the workshop's beginning soon, and I'll be very glad to connect with people who would like to find out more.
Oh, wonderful. And your website is?
It's best to do it through the link because I'm finalizing the meditative drawing workshop.
Yes.
Website.
Okay, and, fantastic. Yeah.
I do some other marketing work, which is separate, which I've had a website for previously. So going through the link is the best way to reach me, or on LinkedIn.
Yes. Okay. Absolutely fantastic. And it's Jean Kropper, Jean Kropper is who I have had the absolute joy of speaking with for this podcast episode. Jean, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for it's just been such a lovely conversation. Your insights around just the transformative nature of using art to help process emotions, and this idea that it's open for anybody. We don't need to be creative. You are the guide, you are the leader. And even just that little activity that we did, I really enjoyed. I was focused and I was present as you were talking us through after the breathing. I really enjoyed my experience of being with you, as well as bringing all of your wisdom to our listeners. So I want to say thank you again for joining me today.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And really, people are welcome to give it a try and see what it's like for them. You don't need any art background. And it's just one of the ways that you can release strong emotions, but also just come together and have a bit of creative fun.
That sounds lovely. So I really encourage you to reach out to Jean, and I'll include the link to Jean's workshops in the show notes accompanying this episode. So thank you again for joining me. It is always such a joy to have your company. I really appreciate you being a part of this beautiful podcast community, and I will be back with you again next Wednesday with another new episode. All right, take care of you. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr. Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.